Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to be reviewing the new I Am, Am I, Who Am I record that was just released on June 3rd, titled Be Here Soon. This is the fourth I Am, Am I, Who Am I album to be released in this sort of collaborative effort where there is a visual for every single song. Jonna Lee, the Swedish frontwoman of this group, has also released two solo albums under her stage name Jonna Lee, with an I instead of a J, because that's how it's pronounced in Swedish. And those albums are technically a separate thing, even though, and I was corrected in my Don't Wait For Me video review, that Jonna has worked with her electronic collaborator Claes Bjorklund for her solo and her collaborative projects. And Jan Strandh, who is actually her partner, and the father of her now child, is the cinematographer and wizard behind all of these audiovisual projects. So there's the same team, but there's just a different name attached to them. Although I do believe that the one big difference is that every I Am, Am I project has had not only 10 songs for it, but they've also, well, Bounty was technically 8, and then there were 2 songs tacked on to it later on to make 10. But every song had a visual that sort of tied together. And then also the fact that, Jonna has produced, I think, some of the songs entirely on her own solo projects. She's worked with Claes. She's also worked with other artists on those projects, whereas I Am, Am I, Who Am I is more kind of in-house. Though there is a collaborator featured in Lars Winnerbäck. I don't know, you don't really hear his vocals very strong. I think he's just backing vocals, but he is featured as a feature on this record for track number 2. So we have Be Here Soon. Now I've already filmed my thoughts on Don't Wait For Me, which was the first song that we got the beginning of April, I'd like to say. It was 2 or 3 months ago. When she obviously decided to release this album piecemeal, 1 song per week. And now we have gone through 10 weeks and we have the final song. However, we do not have the final visual. Jonna has also just had a baby boy named Bauer. And the boy was born, I believe, on May 25th. So just a week before this album was supposed to come out, which is very Katy Perry of her. I mean, Katy Perry famously released an album like a week after she had a baby in 2020. So that's a very similar thing. It's not common, very uncommon for music artists to time those two things to coincide, but it seems to be more and more happening. But unfortunately, the pregnancy, having a baby, it takes you out of commission for a little bit. And due to her posts, it seems like there was a little bit of medical stuff going on with her baby that caused her to stay in the hospital with him for a little bit longer than than would have been expected. I don't know if he was a bit early. I don't think he was that premature. I mean, it sounded like she was expecting him around the beginning of June. So that was always kind of the plan, was that the album and the baby would come out at the same time. But unfortunately, she's had to push back the release of the final visual for the song Walking on Air. So we have the song, we do not have the visual for it. I'm assuming it'll come sometime later this month once she's able to get back in the saddle. Because now that she is a mom, and of course, Jonna is 40 years old, so this is her first child. And she has a lot of, I could imagine reservations about being a mother and this path that she admits was never one she saw for herself, and it kind of happened all by surprise. And this album explores that. And, I hope that everything goes well with little Bauer. And, it's so exciting to think of her as a mother. But yeah, some of these more kind of alternative, hermit-like kind of goddess, I don't know. I don't see them as moms necessarily, like having children. They're just sort of doing their thing, making their art. I talked about this in the Florence Welch review. Florence is a bit younger than Jonna, but she's kind of going through that. Women in their 30s are just like, should I have kids or do I continue to just be this, touring hippie artist who, can like rely on not having, the income to support a child. But Jonna is definitely, exploring the theme of motherhood in a really interesting way on this record. And the album cover, of course, explores that. And she admits in an interview that, even in a very liberal country like Sweden, for a woman to advertise herself for a project pregnant is kind of taboo. So she wants to break down those barriers a little bit more by showing herself with a baby bump. And it's not necessarily like the Rihanna, or the Beyonce kind of like it's about to be sexy kind of thing. Like, no, it's about like the actual essence of motherhood and the changes of the body and all of those things. Not to belittle what Rihanna and Beyonce are doing with their pregnancy photo shoots. That's a whole other thing. But Jonna actually did drop the official album cover, so I stand corrected. I truly believed that black and white image that she served us with the album announcement back in April, I truly believed that was the actual album cover. That was just a stand-in. The actual album cover came out like a couple weeks later, and it's her in a dark forest. In the same sort of white bodysuit, but with the long extensions, which looks wonderful. It is such a striking image, and ultimately, I do think it's a better choice. Though honestly, I wasn't upset with that black and white image because this album is very stripped back and very organic. So for her to go in that route with a photo shoot would definitely fit the vibe and aesthetic. But overall, Be Here Soon is a real treat. Now, I wanted to make sure I waited until I heard all the rest of the songs to film this review. And I'll be honest with you, it's hard when a song is released every week, like a part of you wants to wait until the whole thing is out to watch it in one full thing. But I did listen to each song and watched each visual each week they were released. So I did follow along. It's not like I'm just hearing this all for the first time. However, of course, I have just watched all the visuals and listened to the album several times together. And I believe this album sounds a lot better as a package than it did when we were getting songs once per week. Something about the cohesion here is just so so symbiotic. And I have a lot more positive things to say than originally I might have thought, because I've seen people, some Jonna fans are maybe not too thrilled with the direction she took on this record. This is definitely a slightly more country folk record than anything she's ever done, at least since Bounty. I mean, I know that Jonna has released self-titled, independent, I don't know if you can find them on streaming kind of projects, which I'm afraid I have not listened to at all. Please forgive me. I love I.Am's music, and Jonna's music, but I haven't gone into her, 2000s and stuff. I don't know if I ever will. There's so much music she's putting out these days. But apparently this is a little bit more hearkening back to that. It's sort of getting down to the root of voice and instrument, which, her previous records were so produced with electronic, dizzying synthesizers, and the records were so danceable, or they were very murky and they were very sort of esoteric. This album has those moments, but it's all diluted just a little bit. And you really do hear those like acoustic guitars coming through. Something that I wouldn't associate normally with Jonna and her sound. This album feels a lot more by the fireside, as I say in my Don't Wait For Me review. Don't Wait For Me, I will link in the description. I've already kind of gone a little bit more into diving into that song and the track and the lyrics. I love it. It's a great opening ballad, really evocative melody with the visual of her in this place, kind of in a place haunted by her past and feeling like she's ready to escape or ready to sort of be reborn. But don't wait for me, because I'm going to go at my own pace. And the whole idea of Be Here Soon, this sort of, preparation for a new life to come into the world as a metaphor for the rebirth that Jonna is going through, and also Claes. Claes has also had a kid in the last few years. And so Claes and Jonna together, both being parents, and Jon, because Jon is, of course, the parent of Bauer, all of them being parents is sort of a real kind of culture shock for them. So that's kind of existentially brought up in the lyrics. So track number 2, Canyon, featuring Lars Winterback. Like I said, you don't really hear his voice prominently. I think he is predominantly backing vocal. Maybe he also contributes to the instrumental more. There's sort of this, it sounds like a theremin, if anyone's familiar. It's this like instrument we use this like a saw and like make this really cool oscillating sound. But this synth riff that is very eclectic sounding, really carries the ambiance of this very country acoustic track. And it's a change up for, Jonna. It's like I said, it's not that bombastic. It's not that, electronic, but it is still such a vibe. And like I said, that synth riff is still it's still kind of in the realm of electronica that she will explore. Climbing to the top, watching the towers from the canyon, the faces I forgot and all their lives that I abandoned. Could be forever ago, tomorrow, lines are blurred from where I'm standing, wanting someone else's shoulder for a real and true companion. Anyone, try to hear your voices, but the thorns are growing high. Tell it like it is, or save it for another life. My blood is strong, your head swelling. Hungry, double tongues. Trade me darkness for where days are long. Get me out of, get me out of the winter, because that's obviously a real, being up north, you got long winters, and you'd rather have those long days. Keep the wolves at bay till summer's gone. Had a chosen ally, but I lost her understanding. Got lost inside the magic I constructed in a nightmare. Arms outstretched, forever fumbling in the dark. You hid the feeling well. Lift me higher like you used to. Got no time, so we are leaving. Jonna describes this song as about returning back to her home, feeling lost and disconnected from the reality you once knew. There's this interesting kind of leash around her neck in the visuals where it's connected to something far off camera. And she has herself in all these beautiful little, very Nordic vistas, iconic vistas that fans of Jonna might recognize, like the rock face from Remember the Future, the ocean, the sea, the lakefront from like Blue era, the birch forest that is sort of used for some of the Everyone Afraid to Be Forgotten album art. It shows her just sort of interjecting herself into these vistas, but she feels out of place in them. Like she's got her binoculars and she's scanning, trying to look for something familiar, but nothing quite seems like it was. And it's an interesting dichotomy for, Jonna to be showing herself dressed so pedestrian. Like she's not usually dressed in such average clothing as she is for the visuals of this project. Very much a little bit less, not to say it's not stylish. I mean, the styling, Comme des Garçons comes through with her styling once again. And the costuming can still be really exquisite. But it's a different, more muted kind of understated costuming that is a little bit more suburban compared to what we might be accustomed to her for. And yeah, there's a feeling of being lost in this song. There's a feeling of just roaming through the roads, looking for some familiarity. And the melody and the sort of rambliness of the country sound, it just really carries that aesthetic. And it's a strong song for me. It's a strong song. All of these are. Zeven, not seven, Zeven, which apparently is seven in Dutch. I don't know if that was some significant kind of correlation she was trying to make there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's really interesting to me that this song uses 7 as a trope to explain OCD. Because throughout the visual and throughout the lyrics, she sings, gotta spit it out, it's nearly Zeven. 6, 7, 9, gotta synchronize, control each moment in time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, vision. Empty pockets full of ambition. Gotta spit it out, it's nearly Zeven. The riff, the numerical sort of influence on the numerical reference is, for anyone suffering from OCD and depression, very relatable. And it displays, in the way that she, is at the faucet and she's like using the tap and she's turning it on and off 7 times before she gets a glass of water, and she's washing her hands vigorously. She is brushing her teeth vigorously. All of these things are, germaphobe OCD tendencies that I suppose Jonna Lee has always struggled with. And it's something that I have to a minor extent also. And it's interesting that she uses 7 as her safe number, because that's what I'm getting from this, is that 7 is her safe number. Most people who have OCD tend to have a safe number. It's a number that they feel is the right number to do in a ritualistic, repetitive way for any kind of task that they feel it needs to be attached to. And it can be from, any task at all. I mean, for me personally, it was taking 7 sips of water. When I was a teenager, it was like really bad. I was getting to the point where I was doing everything in 7s and 11s. Those are my favorite numbers, 7, 11, and 17. So it's like my combination of my favorite number, 7 and 11. So all of those things kind of just, and even today I find myself doing it. Like I'll listen to my pulse sometimes and I'll like try and hear 7 pulse beats. You know, like it's just in my head, it's so ingrained. And 7 is my favorite number. So I do it as a sort of safeguard against my anxiety because I think in the back of my head that if I do it the wrong number of times, something bad is going to happen. It's a really controlling, kind of sad way to kind of view things. But right now in my life, it's at a point where I don't think it's out of control and I can sort of just let it be under the surface, just in a few weird, quirky rituals that I do. It's not like taking over my life by any means, but I do have to monitor it. And Jonna probably has had it stronger than this. So it's interesting to see. Now, what's really interesting is the breakdown that she has into the wolf character. I must admit, this album definitely for people who are, not into furries, this album might be like, oh, Jonna is a furry now. We need to get her away from that. But it's not about that. It's not about that. Okay. The wolf costume that she wears for a lot of the visuals in this project, which we first see in this visual, first when she's looking in the mirror, and the shots are so well done, especially rewatching these visuals. I'm like, they're more understated than some of the majestic visuals we've come to expect from her in the past, but they are so wonderfully choreographed, in the photographic elements and the sequencing. It's just very well done, but it's very minute. It's like a little subtler than her previous visual albums. So she's transformed into this wolf character and she goes on a bus, and we actually see Claes for the first time. I don't think he's really ever appeared in an I Am Am I visual before, because he does some of the chorus as well. And she's dancing on the bus. And can I say that the switch up in tempo and production to this groovy, slinky, dark kind of thing that goes on in the second half of the song is probably the best part of the album. Like, let's be honest. I mean, this is definitely an album that is devoid of a lot of stuff, anything like the outro of Seven. Okay, this is completely left field, but it's also very at home for what she's done in the past. And so for longtime Jonna fans, it's definitely going to be wonderful to hear. So I'm a huge fan of it, but that's not to say that I wish this album had more stuff you could dance to. Like, that's not really like what I need from this record. I think this record is so much more peaceful. And so not needing to dance to everything in the same way is not an issue for me. But I do love that we have that like transition. I would have loved for it to have been longer. Of course, I think most of us would. But it is brilliant because it is just, it's so much more pop, but it's her take on it. It's distorted, it's off kilter, so unexpected and so wonderful and sensual in a way. But it's kind of off-puttingly sensual seeing her kind of gyrate in this wolf costume. It definitely is kind of like, wow, okay, like there's a lot of signals going off here. But I think it, for the narrative, is so compelling because obviously then we move into I Tenacious, and she sort of runs off the bus, and then she's free from the wolf, like she's like, okay, I'm just gonna like be a lot more stripped back. And the melody in this song, I Tenacious, is very sparse in production. It's very haunting. It's got her ethereal vocal runs coming in very strong. Honestly, I Tenacious is a song I still need a little bit more time with melodically. Out of the whole record, it's definitely one that sort of falls under the wayside a little bit. There are just a lot of stronger songs for me melodically. Welcome, A Late Rebellion, Break It Down for the Fools, Hawk and Spit, The Raising and Shaping, Shaking the Old, Embrace It, Not Your Concern, No Father Raised My Will, I Tenacious, Let Them See You Broken, Silent No More, Daughter of Their Sorrow, Never Let Them Forget, The Struggle Is All Ours, Sons of Tomorrow. I wonder if Jonna knew she was having a boy when she wrote those lyrics, because she mentioned Sons of Tomorrow. You can't contain this free spirit. But it's also the moment in the visual where she's really coming to terms with her pregnancy. You see her sort of feeling her belly, and there's this wonderful shot of her against the ultrasound floating sort of as if she's the one in the womb herself while she's pregnant. And of course, there are interspersed actual images of the ultrasound of her baby to sort of show just the kind of process of acceptance, I think, for her being a mother. And I'm sure that at the beginning it was like, this is not going to happen. Like I'm not going to you're not going to change my life to fit this unexpected and, intruder, so to speak. But by the end of the song and through the visual, it's almost as if like she has this spiritual epiphany that as much as this was not what she planned, it's very much going to fulfill her. And that she cannot escape that she knows she can have a child. Like, it's not like she's in a place where it wouldn't be possible, that she should see this through and that there could be the most beautiful thing happening right now. But she wants to make sure that, as she sings, I'm a daughter of their sorrow. So maybe her parents, there was some things going on there that made their relationship not so great. So she doesn't want to continue that cycle. No father raised my will. So yeah, I get this idea of like, okay, if I'm gonna be a parent, I'm gonna do it my own way. But I'm gonna make sure I break the cycle of I'm gonna be the most loving parent I can be. I have to embrace it. So yeah, and it's an important cornerstone of the theme of the record and the story, but it's not my favorite song. Track number 5, Changes. This is a song that I appreciate for how understandable her vocals are. I'll confess that, to be perfectly honest, as much as Jonna is such a brilliant lyricist, like truly next level of how, obtuse some of her lyrics are, and also because of the fact that her voice is so distorted and somewhat muddled in the production and her pronunciation, I have trouble understanding a lot of the time what she's saying. And I'm more into the melody anyway. And you know that I'm a melody first, music first, lyrics second kind of person. When I listen to a song, I'm not always listening to the lyrics the first time. I'm more just in the vibe. That's, kind of how I'm more just feeling the essence of the song and the music. But Changes, it commands you a little more to listen to the lyrics, which I appreciate. You can understand them more. I hear your jaded voice reliving fading songs, changes, and Holocene. That is not what I heard in the lyrics, but I guess that makes sense. I didn't know what I heard. But the needle and the damage done. Holocene is, I think, like sort of like the era of Earth's geological history that we're currently in, if I'm not mistaken. The needle and the damage done, as the night dissolves when tomorrow comes, changes and silence, forever wishing they were yours. In the visual, she is kind of amongst all these relics of her past, these broken dolls. There's video footage of her as a child dancing. The production is very 80s. Like I'm getting sort of the police vibe, like in the chord progression of the rhythm. And then there's just this sonar ping that kind of comes in. And then there's this wonderful flute kind of trippy ending to the song. It's like very whimsical. And interestingly, looking at the lyrics here, she references later on when she is repeating the chorus of "I heard your jaded voice reliving fading songs." She sings "Changes" and "Riverman," Rhiannon, and "The Hounds of Love." The Hounds of Love, Kate Bush. I mean, obviously she grew up in the 80s. So she's referencing these 80s songs that obviously shaped her childhood or also shaped, her love of music, as she grew up. And so I think in the lyrics, she's kind of using these old songs as sort of a nostalgic, reflection on her own musical evolution. That she wants to just listen to her old records, but she also knows she wants to evolve with her sound. And she's paying homage to her influences and to the music that shaped her growing up. But in saying, "I hear your jaded voice reliving fading songs," it's sort of like she's singing to herself saying, you shouldn't belittle your own music because it's not as good as those songs that are now fading because they're old. And doesn't mean they need to be forgotten, but it just means that doesn't mean that, they cannot be bested, I suppose. I'm really pulling at straws here because I'll be honest with you, I'm really having a hard time interpreting the lyrics to this song. And that's a thing that I have an issue with Jonna. It's not an issue, But for some people who are like really, really good at perceptively piecing it apart, it's like her entire song is a riddle and everything is just layered and layered and layered and layered to the point where the metaphors just stop really making any sense. But I don't really care. They sound good. They sound good. Like when she sings, "In their pale blue shine you," that doesn't even make grammatical sense, but it sounds interesting poetically, if you think about it. And you sort of get the gist, but for me with poetry, it's like I took a creative poetry class and I got exhausted trying to overanalyze and pick apart the true meaning. I mean, Jonna obviously knows the true meaning. She wrote this, but I'm not her and I haven't had her experiences, so I'm just going to appreciate the poetry. But I'm not going to try and extrapolate meaning that, I don't know. It just feels like it's too much of a reach for me sometimes. So I apologize if, there are others who are better at interpreting these lyrics because I'm here for the music. I'm here for that sonar ping and that flute part because those parts just serve so strong. Next we have Flying or Falling. This is the vibiest track on the record. Like this is the most campfire. This is the most ethereal because there's some gorgeous choral moments. There's light instrumentation. It's very acoustic. Flying or falling, follow or lead, connected, interlaced. And of course, in the verses, there's this sort of ominous, in percussive heaviness to the sonic elements. But then it, in the chorus, opens up like a breeze, feeling it for the first time. It's just so lightweight and so elevating. And so that dichotomy just really sells the expanse of the song so wonderfully. Wishes and needs above the palmy surface. Trouble hovers near, and boy, they got me good, like icy hailstorms of my childhood. Bite my lips to warm till they turn blue. I try to soften the surface, bend through the ashes with spears. I thought it was with speed, but with spears. I'm not 100% sure how accurate these genius lyrics are, by the way. Behind the mask, the same version. All my obsessions and fears cut through the softening surface. Nothing left here to see at all, smashing the pavement with tears. In the visual, we see the wolf character in the verses kind of despondently sort of going through living in an apartment in the city, laying in bed, clearly depressed, scrolling through on the laptop, on the phone, kind of just down on, really down in the doldrums and very kind of very much enwrapped in social media, so to speak, and just being stuck in how it's honestly how I feel when I live in the city. And then contrasting it with the wolf that, is out in the forest and so free and enlivened by just the breeze on the wind and looking at the trees. It's so like exactly how I feel like when I tell people that I'm not a city person. It's like, yeah, I'm a flamboyant gay person, but at the same time, like as much as my people tend to be in the cities, I can't escape the call of the wild. And I just feel so much more at peace in nature. So it's a really interesting visceral reaction that comes up for me when I hear the song, the visuals, the sonic elements, the way it opens up. I saw it interpreted in the comments on the YouTube video that someone sort of interpreted it as the wolf actually being. See, I interpreted the wolf as the free version of Jonna, the feral, the Jonna that's actually sort of trying to escape from the OCD tendencies that she has, the Jonna that is, not interested in people's opinions of her, that is unafraid of being judged, that is just truly basic instinct, kind of just what feels good, where she wants to be, all of these things. But they were interpreting it differently. They were interpreting the wolf as sort of the control mechanism or her OCD personified. And sort of the inverse, in that the Jonna who, and this goes into the next song, 1,000 Years, which, can I just say, hands down, the best ballad Jonna has ever made. One of the strongest ballads I'd heard in quite some time. Dunes of Sand, I think you've been usurped. I'm always going to love Dunes of Sand. Always going to love Dunes of Sand. But 1,000 Years is that song for me, and it is my favorite song on this record. But on 1,000 Years, again, I see it as the wolf taking over and sort of just kind of letting impulse run wild. And Jonna, is the part of herself that is trying to be a little bit more cautious, people pleasing, a little bit more within the lines, so to speak. Not entirely. I'm not saying that, like, I don't know. That's just how I'm reading the dichotomy, but others are interpreting it another way. For me, Flying or Falling and 1,000 Years, the two songs that focus most on the wolf character and the Zevin as well, it fits the narrative understanding for me that in 1,000 Years she's performing on stage, but she seems kind of hesitant about what she's singing. She doesn't feel quite confident. Something's off. There's not a lot of people in the audience, but the people watching seem kind of bored or not so interested, or they just seem very sad. And, as she sings, she sort of kind of just second guesses herself, and she walks off stage and goes to the dressing room and has this breakdown, and sings the second chorus. And it's just so emotional. It's like I feel it so strong. I mean, obviously, in the chorus, all I need is more time, 1,000 years or more. The only thing I can't have worth staying for. I want that like tattooed across my chest, because that is the most, heart-wrenching sort of admission of like existential, angst, because you feel as though you've once reached a certain age, she's becoming a mom. That's going to steal away a lot of her creative time because she's going to have to focus on that. And she just feels as though she hasn't gotten out what she needs to yet, but she's like needing that time. And of course, we all could use more time for a lot of things. And I do also interpret it as a fear of death and a fear of dying and growing old, because I'm going to always interpret it that way, because that's something that I'm really dealing with. So it would be nice to maybe not live forever, but to live certainly a lot longer than we get on this earth. 1,000 years would probably be pretty nice. She references the album title, Wooden Bridge, Mountain Ridge, Bring Back You. Crooked deals, bad ideals, be here soon. The madness on the faces of strangers. Stick together, but everyone for themselves. Trust no one, and I remain faithless. In the first iteration of the verse, she says, you're someone, I'm somebody nameless. And it's interesting because she's looking at her fans, and her fans are sort of, in her interpretation, someone, and then her stage name is iamamiwhoami, which is basically a nameless name. So I interpret it as her saying, like, gosh, I'm just here to please this crowd. I'm seeing the sadness in their faces, and they want forever to me be this same character. I'm this artifice. I'm this masked singer, so to speak. But everything changes. I'm going to have a baby. I don't have all the time in the world to just put on the show for them that they want to see. And so she's reckoning with the, reality of the shift in her life and how that's going to impact her performance and artistry. And at the end of the day, it's just would be really nice to have more time. And of course, when she comes back to the stage, she sort of dismayedly looks at the wolf character pretty much devouring Claes, which is so artfully done, like the interpretive dancing that's done on the stage. And the breakdown in the instrumental just gets very loose and percussive. And jazzy. There's like a jazzy inflection. And the wolf's just letting go and having fun. But it's like complete rebellion. It's complete anarchy on stage. And there's the mother with the baby watching with somewhat concern, but also indifference. And she's just like, Jonna's thinking, what has my career become? That's how I'm interpreting it. Again, this is my interpretation. I could be very wrong. But that's how I'm interpreting these visuals. But if there was insecurity in the 1,000 Years track, the next one, Thunder Lightning, sees her back kind of to form in her element, where she kind of confidently is organically dancing with these female dancers in these skin-tight, flesh-colored bodysuits. Really, again, showing off her pregnant body and the femininity and is celebrating femininity and womanhood. I am thunder and lightning. I strike without a warning. Maybe you're ignoring the signs hidden in the warm air. Hear me when I'm calling, as she confidently states in the chorus, which has a country backing. It's actually reminiscent of Canyon. These two songs have a kind of sonic lineage in terms of the acoustic backing, but this one's a little bit more up tempo. And although in the verses, it definitely kind of alludes to that I tenacious energy that I am coming with, that I need to see destruction to feel alive. And when I say I'm sorry, I'm full of lies. Got a violent streak, I'm not ashamed. Are you beat yet? Pressure keeps rising high. Nothing thrills me like a savage game. Nothing kills the silence like the rain, as she sings in the first verse iteration. It hurts, but least we feel it. Times are numbing, and I've got to break the stillness for a while. That tenacious spirit's coming out. And when things become mundane, watch out. So there's this dichotomy between, obviously there's a confidence to the dancing, but there's an edginess that is sort of much deeper in the lyrics, speaking of, don't poke the bear. And when I strike, you're not going to be ready to defend yourself because you're not going to see it coming because I'm sleuthy. Like that's what I'm getting from this. You never know where lightning is going to strike, but I will, strike if I'm put in a pressure cooker. And so be careful. Love me at your own risk is the vibe I'm getting overall. But there are a lot of other ways you could interpret it. Sonically, this might be an unpopular opinion, but I do think this might be my least favorite song on the record. This song is definitely one of the, kind of single choreographed visual kind of tracks of the record that kind of is begging to be a single. And it's kind of pop, very much more pop, kind of accessible in terms of the melody, but it's not really a strong melody for me. I'm not really that captivated by it. So I'm not exactly, I'm not saying, I don't want to say it's a skip because when I listen to the whole record, it's definitely important to the story, but it's not a song I'm seeking out to listen to on its own. It's repetitive. It's not really the melody is just not really striking me. I don't know how else to put it. It's not really striking me. There's no real highs and lows. It's kind of monotone. And I just, maybe the vibe is a little bit like if it was a bit more electronically produced. I don't think that's the problem because I do like the acoustic backing, but it's just not quite fitting for me. I'm sorry. I do love the dancing, the visuals, the choreography. It's very well executed. But Call My Name, one of the other much more striking songs on the record, is definitely a highlight for me. There's no forgetting, no remedy, reaching for love helplessly. There's no forgiveness, no indemnity. Live with the loss, respectfully yours. Call my name, call my name. You only have to call my name indefinitely. We've got the flute coming in again, sort of like a horn call. We have her in the bodysuit in a green screened into these forest settings. Oh, it really makes me miss Sweden. It's been 5 years to this spring that I was last there, and the forests are just so vast and cavernous, and you just feel swallowed up in it, but you feel so in alignment when you're in them. I don't know how to describe it, but Jonna interspersing all these iterations of herself in different poses, kind of call and responding to herself. There's some gorgeous vocal harmonization runs going on where she's, a little discordantly, but it doesn't matter, kind of harmonizing with herself. It's a really captivating visual. It's a really captivating song. It's ominous and forthcoming. I actually think it would have been a great way to potentially end the record because the final song, Walking on Air, keep in mind we do not have a visual for, but the final song, Walking on Air, it ends a little bit lacklusterly for me. We do have the electric guitar coming in, which is pretty iconic. And it's got a really great whimsical guitar riff as a backing. Of course, we don't yet have the visual for that, so I cannot comment on what that might be. But I have a feeling the wolf character is going to be involved because he is in the single art. The greatest story of its kind will need a somber ending, giving the killer me inside enough sediment to bite. Nothing beats the comfort highs of sorrow. It is a sin, it is a fact. Inside I'm high and hungry. Racing the pulse legs on my back, I play dead and I attack. Sweet and salty lies, roses and mallows. I'm walking on air, but I'm running out of life. I'm not here. I'm falling head first. Pull me up and push me down. I'm walking on air. In the outro and in between the lines, I lose my control, walking on air. So I assume the visual is going to feature the wolf character, running in frenzied abandon in the forest, and Jonna sort of reconciling the wilder side of her with the management of the rest of her time, on this earth. I'm assuming that's kind of how it is. Because it's similar to flying or falling. Am I really soaring, or am I actually deceptively falling and going into a dark pit? Because what am I is am I feeding the right am I feeding the right part of myself? I think is the ultimate question that is being, should I be feeding the wolf, or should I be feeding the blonde girl version of myself? I don't know exactly how that's broken down for her. I've heard some people talk about the wolf as being am I as a collective, and Jonna being Jonna. There's a lot of different interpretations people are placing on the wolf character versus her, and because they're the two main characters of this story. And so it'll be interesting to see how the visual plays out. But, in the comments, I'd really like to see your interpretations of all of this, because it's just dizzying. It really is just dizzying. And this video could be like 3 hours long if I went through every line by line. The electric guitar does steal the show, but the ending, the outro, it could be a little bit more triumphant. It could be a little bit more like an ending. I'm thinking about Shadow Show. I'm thinking about, Goods. I'm thinking about Fold. Yeah, I don't know. It sort of just ends, but it's a very, again, broad and expansive statement that she ends upon. Is it that she's feeding, the wolf her sorrow? Her sorrow, the wolf character gets stronger with her, the more sorrow she is feeling, because it sounds like, giving the killer me inside enough sediment to bite. Nothing beats the comfort highs of sorrow. It does add a negative connotation to this free-spirited wolf character. And we, of course, also see the wolf character digging a pit in the visual for flying or falling. Whose body is going in that pit? That raises that question. What exactly is that wolf digging? So there's definitely a power dynamic that is very interesting. You could call it the ego versus the, subconscious, or I don't know. There's a lot of different ways you can interpret it, but ultimately, I'm going to walk away with it as that the wolf is, uninhibited, free emotion, wild, free from inhibition. And that's not really a good or bad thing. Like, it's both. It has a dark side to it, because it can be self-destructive, because it doesn't have like cautious, it's not risk averse. So it will potentially end up harming itself and consuming itself. But the Jonna character is frightened more, and withdrawn and reclusive, and trying to people please. And so the two are trying to reconcile the fact that there's a baby coming in, and what is the baby going to channel? What's this new character, this being that's coming through, going to carry in from my mess? I ultimately see that as sort of the story of this record, because there's just all this uncertainty to, the sound and the lyrics of the future. There's hope, but there's also despondency. So it's a really kind of mixed emotional record for that reason. It's murky, it's very personal, it's close to the heart. And ultimately, I think for Jonna and her career, her path and her career, I think it's a stellar addition to her catalog. It's not the most majestic or grandiose, but it didn't need to be, and it's not meant to. It is her Joanne era. Pardon the reference. But yeah, it still has such an exquisite, cohesive feel. I love the raw acoustic instrumental. It still feels like a Jonna project, an I Am project with all the visuals. I can't wait to see the Walking on Air visual. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. My favorite song is A Thousand Years. This song is just melodically perfect. I really love the lyrical message. It comes through the strongest to me. And I also love the visual. I think it also has the strongest visual. The next strongest visual, I would say, okay, so Flying or Falling would be my next favorite song. That also has a really strong visual. Then I say Zevin. And then Canyon and Don't Wait for Me. And Call My Name. Call My Name's in there as well. My least favorites, yeah, I Tenacious, Walking on Air, and Thunder Lightning aren't as strong to me, but, I still vibe with them. Like, I'm not going to hate on them. If I had to pick a least favorite song, I hate to say it, but it might be Thunder Lightning. The song is a bit longer, and I feel like it's a bit repetitive, and I just am not feeling it as much. But anyway, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments. I hope I did this review justice. Again, it's a bit of work trying to dive into this, and I didn't want this review to be terribly long, but there's so much to sift through, and I'm really, really interested in the world that she creates with all these projects, because I do believe there is a narrative, but it's hard to deduce what it is. I hope you all enjoyed this. I will link my reviews of all of the I Am records and the Jonna records that I have reviewed on this channel, so they will all be in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Please give this a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you are new here, and I will see you all in my next one. Peace, love, and light. Bye.